Welcome to Energy Linguist, a sacred space for awakening souls ready to receive divine transmissions and the raw truth that sets them free. I am Laura Ahern, a spiritual channel and energy translator here to bring through messages from highest guidance to help you hear your inner knowing, reclaim who you are beneath the noise, and live from the truth within. Take a breath. You've found the space where remembering begins. Hello, everyone. It's Laura, the Energy Linguist, and I'm so excited to have you here with me today on this next episode of Energy Linguist Podcast, your space to decode your energy, heal your patterns, awaken your path while we receive divine transmission and healing. I am so excited to have you here. Divinity is presenting me with echoes, which is pointing to this need to kind of peel back layers of the onion and reroot things that have been deeply rooted for a long time. In fact, many of these things that are starting to be exposed are quite confusing to some souls on the planet because they don't understand the problem with what is being revealed. It has been so ingrained within their being to engage with a certain paradigm and dimension of thinking that those who are uncovering and unveiling a lot of these deeper truths and wisdom are being shunned and shamed for it, as if they are the problem, when in fact they are not the problem. They are exposing the problem. And so before we even kick off with this divinely transmitted message, I want you to know that if you identify as one of those souls who is seeing the world in a different light, who is seeing a different possibility and potential rise within the world, which requires us to face that which has been covered up, that requires us to face that which has been ignored or hidden, you are not alone, and you are held in the arms of God, in the arms of divine light, comforted and seen in the purity of your intention. I want to start by saying that often when we are the souls who are here to shine light on that which has been in the shadows, that the external world will often shun us for what is actually quite pure in intention. And it's because most of the world attaches its salvation and safety to its belief systems. So for instance, you might be aware that there is a saying that there are two things that do not get discussed: politics and religion. Why would that be? Both of those at the core of them hold what makes us feel safe. And when someone else has a contradicting insight or opinion or perception on something we hold to be the core of our safety, we actually start to feel, if we're overly attached to that belief equaling our safety and survival, we are extremely attached to that not being challenged. We do not want that foundational piece to be rocked or broken down or questioned because of the terror that rises within us about that. This terror that rises around, well, what if I was wrong? What if I've invested in all of this and I believe in all of this and I was wrong? Right? Our salvation is linked to it. And so often there is an immediate rejection that occurs with those of us who are change makers because people perceive their safety as being in the familiar and being in the structures that they have existed in their whole life. Now, most of those people are still existing within their survival zone. They are not growing outside of the old paradigm of thinking. They're so infiltrated and inundated with the belief systems that they will go literal to war to try to force that opinion to be agreed upon by those outside of them, which begins to unravel that lie, the deceit that somehow those beliefs create safety, because over-attachment to beliefs can often create war. And so today, divinity is showing up to talk to us specifically about unveiling some layers that need to be seen. It's what they are calling the cord of discord, and looking to the core of what actually creates this fear and this disconnect and this rejection when the world is healing in a lot of ways. And instead, many people contract around it to try to hold the old, which only kind of further deteriorates the system in which they exist in. The cord of discord exists within this disconnect that occurs in our vibrational system. For those of you who have listened to other podcasts of mine or have read my book, The True Calling, you may be familiar with the energy evolution formula, in which I talk about our energy as a whole. You are energy, from your invisible spiritual vibration all the way through to your physical being. And the layers in which this energy translates to become more dense and visible moves from the most invisible, quickest moving vibration of our spirit into our thoughts, which some are quite unconscious and still somewhat invisible. Then some of them become more conscious on the surface level. Then it's our emotions, which we are typically more aware of, sometimes more so than our thoughts. And then the most dense expression of us, which is our physical being. And this discord that divinity is pointing us into recognizing is this particular part of our vibrational field that gets imprinted upon and disconnected, disjointed from our natural way of vibrating in our spiritual core. So each of us has what I call a unique vibrational blueprint. And this is like your spiritual fingerprint. It is a vibrational way that from the very core of your being, for those of you who are like me and love science, string theory, right? The very core of the atom, even smaller, there's this vibrating string that vibrates all things into being, right? It builds us into this physical expression of ourselves. That most invisible part of you that vibrates in a very unique way that brings the cosmos into its wholeness. The universe is not complete without you in it. There would be a void if that piece was missing. And so you came to have this human experience on this planet and to vibrate in your own unique way to help bring wholeness and balance to this collective system. We are all one part of this collective whole. And yet, if you are living this human experience, you are probably realizing that we feel anything but united. We feel at odds. We feel disjointed. We feel disconnected. We notice and pay attention to most that which is not like us, and fear it. And we've been taught to react to it, to fight that which is unfamiliar, as opposed to recognizing that our safety lies within the uniqueness and the unfamiliar nature, and coming into something that is so different that it might be completely unrecognizable at first, which is our own unique vibrational expression. So the cord of discord points to this place in our vibrational system where that most invisible spiritual vibration begins to move more slowly. Therefore, it's becoming more dense. as it moves into the realm of our thoughts. And that imprint that is made is in this unconsciousness of our thoughts. Much has to do with our brain development, because when we are young and we're observing our outside world, and let's say our parents are upset about something, we don't have the development of our brains expanded to a point where we can understand that maybe they're acting that way because of something outside of ourselves. Because up until the age of around 2 years old, almost 3, we have not yet formed this independent sense of I, which means everything that's happening in our world, we are kind of internalizing that person must be upset and that must be happening because of me. And so we don't conclude that mommy or daddy is mad because of something that's happening with their job. We often conclude that they are that way because there's something wrong with us. And it might be because they're lashing out with frustration around us. It couldn't, maybe not even be towards us, but we're absorbing it and experiencing it as something that is innately wrong with us. And so in order to stay in the good graces of our caregivers, in order to stay in harmony and be loved and not feel rejected and not be in the uncomfortableness of when people are upset, we start to try to play this inner game of who do I need to be in order to avoid that discomfort? And so this customization of our identity starts to happen in a very unconscious way because of all of these subconscious conclusions that start to kind of get piled on in our minds, and then we behave from that place. When you look at the energy evolution formula from spirit to thought to emotion, then into physical, it points right to this discord beginning between spirit and the thought component of our mind. I want you to understand that thought and emotion are both a component of the mind, as are beliefs and identities. And you'll hear me speak on this often, that our minds are the conduit through which our spiritual self and the invisible realm is made manifest into the physical. It is the conduit through which that vibration translates into physical. And spirit is pointing us into the awareness of this imprint that gets made that creates this disjointed nature between our true organic spiritual vibration and our minds. And so if you imagine this disjointedness begins right there, what becomes disjointed is our thoughts, is our emotion, and our physical being. So we start to experience imbalances and discord in our physical bodies, in our emotional body, in our mental body, all on account of this disconnect from our vital life energy source. So why is spirit bringing us into that when where they started this conversation was the unveiling and exposing of roots? What happens when we start to unveil and expose root causes, generational patterns, things that we, as beings that are starting to see life from a higher perspective, are starting to identify as the reason for discord and disjunction? Often the external response to that is negative. And to become aware of why this desire to heal turns into discord with our external world is to be aware of what's happening within the vibrational system. Within our being, the discord has happened before the mind. That's our thoughts, our beliefs, our identities, our feelings. So when we go to mend and reconnect the cord, it creates significant changes in the structure, because the structure has been based on a false premise. When I asked divinity what was in the way for us in the ability to create this harmony and reconnect chords and unveil things that haven't been working and allow the masses to not be afraid of it, but to see that the unveiling is occurring so that we can all live in a higher state of joy and peace and safety within ourselves. Divinity said that what's in the way is the preconceived notion of our minds. And what they're translating that to in vibration, preconceived, meaning an idea or an opinion that was formed before having evidence for its truth or usefulness. And then notion is a conception of a belief about something. What they're saying here is that what is in the way is this idea that was formed before we had any evidence of its validity, its truth, its benefit to us. And it's a notion, meaning there's this part of it that's assumptive. A notion, right? This concept of belief, they actually talk about it in this essence of like an impulse or a desire, one that's kind of intuitive. So there's this assumed energy under the things we've chosen to believe in. This assumption is very interesting, and they're taking, I can tell they want to take me down a little rabbit hole here to talk about assumption a little bit so we understand how predetermined ideas that we become addicted to can stay in the way of our own evolution. And it can actually create a significant disconnect from those that we love dearly in our lives, because we're stuck in the self-preservation of our old belief system as opposed to being willing to open ourselves to a new way of seeing the world. Divinity is showing me this really great practical example around assumption that they want to dig into, and then we'll kind of jump back into how it ties in with their messaging about this discord. What they say is, we assume people are what we feel about them, when the truth is they are what they feel about themselves. So there's two different pieces here. We assume people are what we feel about them. So for instance, there have been numerous times within my own experience in which I made choices out of love for myself and boundaries and just valuing myself for the first time ever. And unfortunately, it was quite inconvenient for other people to experience. Now, that is common because people don't like change, especially change they didn't ask for. So that choice, though it was made out of love, there wasn't any anger. It created quite a bit of inconvenience when people had to either face my truths, face my emotions, or have me stop giving to them in an excessive way in which they were benefiting from. In those type of examples, what I know to be true is that those people, because they experienced discomfort that felt frustrating and upsetting to them, there was this assumption that I am what they feel about the situation, meaning they were angry. So they assumed that I am angry and I was acting out of anger. But my actions were anything but. But what gets experienced when we start to realign ourselves with something that is harmonious in our lives is that other people who are not yet ready for the change internalize it. It's inconvenient to them. And they become hyper-focused on the discomfort that, quote unquote, I made them feel, which led them to create this label of me within their minds and this definition of who I am within their storyline. Now, you can see the assumption energy in this. It's very interesting when it comes to this definition of assumption. Assumption is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain without proof. And so often our emotions make us feel very certain about certain things we may be experiencing because we're certain about the way we feel about them, but it doesn't mean that our judgments and labels of those things have any truth or validity to them. And this is where we start to see this multidimensional, infinite experience of reality, because we are all experiencing a very unique reality because of the way we experience our emotions and our thoughts. Divinity wants us to be aware of that assumptive nature. And very much like they channeled in the other podcast, they want us to know that we can stay within the integrity of our own knowing of why we're acting in harmony with ourselves, even when the external world will label it otherwise. They will call it something it's not. What matters most within this experience is this opportunity that divinity is presenting us right now during this transmission, which is to become aware and responsible for what's happening within our own field, not within others' fields. Because when we realize that when we choose to uncover any discord, and we choose to do it from a place of integrity as it aligns with how we feel about it, what it means to us, how we've experienced it, and know that we can hold our experience as sacred without it having to mean anything about anybody else outside of us, but just honoring how it was perceived and interpreted within our own unique experience, then we can allow what's happening within our field to reharmonize. We can disconnect from allowing those things to label us, to lock us into pain, and instead choose to see and hold ourselves through the experience so that it can serve us and empower us to be stronger, to maybe be different, to love ourselves more the next time, to set a better boundary, to hold better space for others. Whatever that unique conclusion is that supports you in knowing that you can experience life different and better next time. It allows us to be made whole in our experience of vibration from the very core of our spirit through our mind of thought, emotion, and our physical self. The cord of discord brings us in to this exposing of that very place where the disconnect starts, which is at that spot in our thoughts and our emotions. And when we stretch our consciousness, because we are a part of the collective consciousness, it starts to stretch others' consciousness, which is uncomfortable. And for those who have not developed the emotional or mental maturity to be ready for this stretch yet, what gets revealed is the immaturity of their capacity to manage the change. And there's no judgment here. It's actually a learning opportunity for them. It's an opportunity to look at the thing that feels triggering to them, to see how they maybe could see it different or feel about it different or think about it different, shift their perspective to understand and maybe not internalize it so much about themselves, but instead choose to see that this is an experience that is happening. And now I, as a spiritual being, in which the Creator exists within me, I have a choice to make about how this impacts me. They could then begin to harmonize their own field. And so though this unrooting, this uncovering feels more like unraveling, especially when we watch those that we love unravel because of our expansion, what divinity wants you to know is that this unraveling is the cutting of the cords that have been wrapped around us are literally beginning to strangle us from just this tightly wound grip around our emotions, our identity, our potential. And they need to be unraveled now. Divinity's advice for you in this experience is to constantly come back into the awareness of your own integrity, of your own unconditional love and light, and ask yourself why. Get back to the core of what made you move, what shined this light, why you want this to be different. And not one that is rooted in pain, though pain is obviously a very big ignition for us, as it has been in my own journey. But to allow that pain to reveal what matters most, to allow pain to reveal the love that you have, whether it's for others, whether it's for yourself, and to continue to choose an alignment and integrity with what you desire to experience and who you desire to be. When we continue to come back home to ourselves and love ourselves fully, even when the external world may not love us fully, we remain whole and safe within ourselves. This is our opportunity to not just heal ourselves into a state of substantial, sustainable wholeness, but to allow that to have the ripple effect that we always desired. The thing we were probably trying to tackle from the outside in. But now divinity is asking you to tackle it from the inside out. So my prayer for you today, as we wrap up this transmission, is that you listen and re-listen and allow this to expand into your heart, to reintegrate all of these seemingly separate pieces of yourself, of your vibration, into one wholeness, and to know that when you vibrate from that wholeness, from this place of love and light and uniqueness, that you will touch and influence lives you cannot imagine just through love alone. And the love of self comes first and foremost. Thank you for being here to receive these messages. And I cannot wait to see you again on our next episode of Energy Linguist Podcast. May you be blessed. Namaste. Thank you for being here, for listening with your heart, and for opening to the truth meant just for you. If this transmission resonated, I invite you to visit lauraahern.com for free resources and sacred support to help you accelerate your awakening and walk your path with more power, trust, and grace. Until next time, trust what you feel, honor what you know, and believe in your power to create something greater than you've ever imagined.